Hello guys, what's up? This is the second video of my complete Python beginners course tutorial series. In this episode, we'll be learning the basics of Python what are functions, variables and data types. So, once you have opened up your main.py script, you're just gonna write print print brackets double quotes and hello world exclamation mark. Don't be too overwhelmed if you don't understand what this means, but in a nutshell it basically means we're telling the computer, hey, can you write this on the terminal for us? Like these The print function is an inbuilt function of Python that says whenever this function is called, whenever we do this function, you gotta write whatever is in these parentheses on the terminal. Let's try it. Let me just run it, and hello world, it works. And if it doesn't work, be very careful of some things, as Python is a case sensitive language. If you have accidentally put a capital P, it won't work. The P needs to be small. And any misspelling in code is very dangerous. It can destroy the whole project. Anyways, so you may be wondering, why have we put this in double quotes? We have put this in double quotes because it's string text. Text is a string. You see here, print writes anything you want on the terminal. Strings are just plain text. For example, this is a string. String can be any plain text. String can be anything. It can be a number. But be careful with this. We'll explain strings in a further video because strings can lead to a lot of errors, and if not handled properly are very confusing. So you don't need to worry about it a lot right now. Just strings can be anything, plain text. Let's see. My name is whatever your name is. My name is Shane. My name is Shane. Alright, let's print this. That works. And now I hope you understand what strings is. If you don't, I'll link the whole text file in the description below or put it up somewhere, maybe on GitHub. Anyways, in this main.py file, now we can have other data types in the print statement as well. The second data type we're going to be looking at is called what do you call it, integers, which are basically all integers. Basically, I think the name is pretty self-explanatory. Negative numbers, positive numbers. But like 32, that's an integer. 41, that's also an integer. You can print these. 41. But be a bit careful, because if you put 41 in quotes, double quotes or single quotes also work, that will make 41 a string. You can also do simple calculations with Python. For example, you can do 42 plus plus maybe 21. So if you run this, it will print 42 plus 21, which is 63. But I told you with strings earlier, you need to be very careful. For example, if we put one of them a string, it will then give us an error. Trace back most recent last call. Unsupported operand types for int and string. As you can see, the computer is telling us you cannot add an integer and a string together. It doesn't know how to add an integer and string. You can't add those. So that's why you're telling about you need to be careful. But if you say, what if I make them both strings? Will that work? If you make them both strings, something will happen. It won't give an error, but it won't be right as well. You see, it gives us 4221. It's basically it thinks 42 is a word and 21 is also a word, so it's combining the words. Like if I tell you a plus b, what will you answer? Not maths, but a plus b, it will basically be ab in English, not in maths. So the computers like if we add any other strings, let's say b and a, it will give us a and b. So if you're working with numbers, be careful not to put these double quotes. And there's another way to write strings, which is also called single quotes. That's absolutely your choice. If you want single quotes, double quotes, I prefer double quotes, but in some cases you have to use single quotes. Like if you have a sentence, normal sentence, that is my dog. All right, you can write this in single quotes, there will be no problem. But if there's a sentence like neighbors, look, now there's a problem. When I put apostrophe s, it thinks the string is ended here. Now this is starting another string and we haven't separated. Yeah, there are a lot of problems in this. So if you want to do that, you need to use double quotes. You'll have to use double quotes. And but what if you want to use double quotes in the string? That's another problem, but you can use triple quotes for that. Triple quotes are basically multi-line quotes. Like this is a, I put this in triple quotes. You may be asking, why doesn't this give any errors? Well, this doesn't give errors because triple line quotes can be in many lines. Look at this. You can write anything here. So we'll look at triple quotes later in a later review. But this is, if you want to use double quotes in your sentence, this is the way how to do it. All right. Anyway, now let's move on to the next type, which is floats. Floats are decimal or floating point numbers. For example, print 1.2. This is not an integer. You know why? Because it's a decimal number. Decimal numbers do not count in integers. The numbers are divided into integers and floats in Python. So when you add these two, you get 1.2. Now you may ask, what will happen if I try to add an integer and a whole number? Let's see. You see, this doesn't give errors, even though there are two different data types. Why does this happen, you may ask? Because Python recognizes these both are number types. So it converts the integers into floats, sorry. So then it adds them, right? But if you want, you can add 0.0, that's the same thing. Anyway, now I think integers and floats are okay, we know about them. And now it is the last data type we're going to be learning in this video is booleans, which is basically true or false. For example, you have, this is a word, true is a word, right? But and it doesn't give an error, and it has a different color when you put it in the bracket without quotes. Do you know true is a boolean? True is a boolean. That's why the Python is like, this is not a string. But if we put true inside a string, that will become a string. Strings are green in color, but I shouldn't be going color wise because everybody has different text editors and all text editors have different color types. Strings have these quotes around them, so be careful. Strings are very powerful but also very confusing. That's why I'm telling you this. Booleans are true or false. If you're running a program, for example, just ignore this. If you're running a program or something, you need running. Running should be equal. If the user is logged on, running should be equal to true. Running is true. All right. This is where booleans come in hand. If you put running as a true as a string, it's gonna cause a lot of problems. So that's why booleans are very important. You may think they are just two data types, you don't need to learn them very well, but booleans are very important. So if we print this like this, it should print true. But and if you write any other word like hello, it gives you an error because that's not any recognized data type. It is a word but it's not a recognized data type. For Python to know that it's a string, you need to have double quotes. And now I've explained all these data types. If you want, you can rewind the video, learn it again, or I'll just link some sheet in the description and you can learn it from there. I hope you've learned this very well because these are the core of Python. You need to learn this. Anyways, now getting forward, there's a what if we are making a game and we have speed? So we need to store the speed value somewhere. So that's storing data is the job for variables. Like var is equal to, a variable can be absolutely anything. There's no limitations. A variable can be an integer, a float, it can be a string, it can be a boolean, it can be absolutely anything. And you can also then print these variables. This is a good practice not to use floating numbers or floating strings, but we'll get on to that later. So variables are like jars. Like jars to store data, right? But if you have ever seen a jar, let's say a jam jar, you can only store strawberry jam in it, right? A variable can only have one value, but the value can be reassigned later. A variable can have one value, let's say true comma something, true comma 12, right? This is not gonna work. True, let's say 12, look, it gives an error. That means separated by new names. It means a variable is like a jar. If you have a jar with honey in it, you can't just put strawberry jam in it. First you have to clean the jar. So if a variable is equal to true, I can just reassign it to then equal to false. So you can reassign variables, but you can't assign multiple values to a variable all at once. So variables are like jars to store data. So you've got them. Variables can string boolean, floats, int, strings, anything, absolutely anything. So we can, let's just write a little program. Let's do a is equal to 12, b is equal to, let's say, 52. All right, then let's say, and variables can also have, like, you can add variables in a variable. For example, we can do c is equal to a plus b, right? This is different from the last example I showed you like few minutes prior, because in the last example we do a plus b. Now this is maths. Last it was English strings, but this is maths. A plus b equal, it is actually a variable. So then we can print c, which is 64. That is correct. A really good practice you should really apply in Python is not use magic numbers. What do I mean by magic numbers? Magic numbers, for example, floating numbers you don't have assigned. Let's see, 12 plus 52. All right, it'll give us the exact same answer. But do you know what the problem with this line is? Is that once you've written it, like today, you may be like, it's very easy, I'll remember it tomorrow. But if you come back 1 or 2 weeks later to the same project after not working on it, you may just forget why have you put those numbers there, what is the value of those numbers. So always create descriptive variable names and put, and if you're going to do any number operations, assign a variable to it. That is a very good practice and I highly encourage you to do it. Anyways, now I think we have covered the data types, the basic data types in this video. Now the last extra thing I want to tell you guys is the another function. It's called the input function. Input, you can get user input from this. Input, what is your name? Let's run this. What is your name? Now I can write here, what is my name? My name is Shane. Right, that is, you can receive user input using this input function. But what if you want to use this user input, like what is your name? What if you want to print their name? You can use it with variables. Variable store anything, even functions like input, but it can't store functions like print. Variable can store only some functions, like this input function. Name is equal to input, what is your name? Then we can do print name. Name, let's enter a name. Yay, that works. But another really cool thing about the print statement, if you want to write like your name is comma name, you can, what will you do? How will you do that? Will you write two print functions? Of course not. You'll do, first you get a string, your name is space, then you exit the string, you go to this side of that what do you call it, double quotes. Yes, you put a comma. Comma means now I want to put another value here, then you can put your variable name. What is it? Now let's try this function and if and program and see if it works. Shane, your name is Shane. Our program is working. All right. So I hope you've understood the basics of Python and hopefully learned something important from this. I'll release a video every day for this series. This is going to be quite a long series because Python is quite an extensive language. Though it may be very easy to learn, it can be very hard, very extensive and very powerful. But one last thing before we go. But what if we want to build a calculator? What if we want to build a calculator? What do? We need numbers for that. If we add strings, I already told you, you're gonna get an error. So how will we get the user to enter a number? But the thing is, the input function will return a string. It will always return a string. So how will you change that? The easiest way to change that is use another inbuilt function, which is called, basically integers are int ints. We put this input function into that. So now it will enter the number. So now this is now first we'll get this input from the user. The user will enter, for example, 32. The user will input 32. 32 will be returned as a string. But then as we have surrounded this integer function around it, so it will convert that 32 number into a integer, a 32 whole number. For example, if we wanted to convert the same thing into a float, now if the user enters 1.2, it will return a string and then convert into a float. But there are also errors. For example, if the user enters some string, like he enters ABCD or XYZ or whatever, so then the input function will return a string, but then the float function will forcefully try to convert that string into a number, which cannot be converted. How can you convert XYZ into a number, into a floating number, decimal number? You can't. So the computer will throw an error. So you have to be careful of that. Right. I've also, if you want to build a calculator, I have also created a simple calculator program which is absolutely for beginners, but you can check that later because it has some if statements, and those are a bit complex. So if you want, you can learn how to do that later. So I think this is all for our first episode. Don't be scared if you're feeling a bit overloaded with knowledge, because I have explained a lot in this video. Usually you learn this in the course of 2 or 3 days, but if you don't understand absolutely anything, you just comment down below and I'll just explain it to you personally. And if you want something like written, not a video explanation, I'm also in the process of creating a website for the whole course. So once it is done, we'll upload all of our courses, everything on that website. So stay tuned. So we also have a Discord server. If you want, you can join that Discord server, and any question, queries, facts, anything you want, you can ask on the Discord server, and you'll get an instant reply within 24 hours. So stay tuned and hope you the best for your journeys.